All right. Who knows I'll give you a hint. She's an author, Joanna Rowling. Anyone know who Joanna Rowling is?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling. Do you guys know what she wrote? Harry Potter. Harry Potter. So J.K. Rowling, I always knew that she started Harry Potter on a napkin in a coffee shop, but I did not know her full story. So she grew up in England to a very impoverished family and lived scraping by. And then she always wanted to be a writer, and her mom's like, that's nonsense, you won't make any money doing that, you need a sensible job. And so I forget what job she got. She got married, she traveled around a little bit, got married, and she's like, life is good, but the marriage was short and very awful. So she got divorced, but she had a child, and she finally decided to go back to England, where she's originally from. And she's living hand to mouth, barely scraping by, basically homeless for a while. Finally found a little tiny apartment where she could rent. Times she didn't have electricity, it was rough for her. And then she got this idea to write Harry Potter. And so I have a little video here. I'm pretty sure it's made by AI, but trying to find one that fits within our time constraints, that tells the story well, is tough. So it's kind of weird. I don't know. I think it's AI. You guys can figure for yourselves. Let me pause that. I think that's amazing. She not only failed in her marriage and was basically failing at life, but she wrote this book, and then she sent it to the publisher, and they said, no one will want to read that. And then she's like, oh, okay, I'll try someone else. And they said, nope, no one will want to read that. I feel like after 2, I'd be like, oh, I guess I just wasted my time. But she persisted. She kept sending that manuscript until finally the 13th person said, let's try it. Can you imagine all 12 of those punished publishers who told her no one will read this, how much they're kicking themselves? I mean, she has made that publishing house billions of dollars. I can't think of an author who is more successful than J.K. Rowling. Rowling, however you say her name. She's got amusement parks based off her, whole parks. Not like a ride, whole parks based on her stories. She makes so much money, and she was told at first, you failed. This book stinks. No one's going to want it. And yet she persisted. And I think that's amazing. She is one of the there's so many famous people who have been told, you're terrible, you're a loser, you're never going to be able to do it, just give it up, you're a failure. Here's a couple of other very famous failures. The guy, Dyson, I forget his first name. He tried 5,000 times to get that vacuum cleaner to work right. And now that is the premium name in vacuum cleaners. Thomas Edison was told by his teachers, you're too stupid to learn anything. The man who changed the world with the light bulb was told, you're too stupid to learn anything. Let's see. Steve Harvey, when he was 10, his teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be on TV. And she called him up to the front of the class. He thought she was going to be like, you're so brave. And she's like, Steve thinks he's going to be on TV. Who does he think he is? You stutter. You'll never be on TV. You're a loser. And now, I don't even know how many shows he hosts. He's got multiple shows. The Price is Right, or not The Price is Right, The Family Feud. He's got his own talk show. He's got that one where he's the judge of a court. That one's really funny. If you haven't seen that one, wherever he's the judge. So that one. Walt Disney's newspaper editor said he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. All of these people were told, you're a failure. You'll never amount to anything. We're talking about, this teacher mode, sorry. This series is about divorce. And I think one thing that a lot of people feel when they come out of a divorce is failure. They feel like they failed. They feel like they tried, and they did everything right. They did everything that they could, and it didn't work. And they don't understand why. And they feel like maybe I'm no good as a spouse. Maybe I'm no good as a person. Maybe I'm no good as a parent. We've all been there. We've all failed at something. It would be great if all of our failures were as trivial as Claire's, that she failed to do a backflip on the trampoline. But as adults, I imagine we all can say that we have had a pretty spectacular failure in our lives. And so how do we handle that? You know, as a teacher, as a coach, a lot of times I see kids, they start to fail and then they just quit. Oh, can't do it, I'm out, I'm done. You know, like if you go to a football game and they start to really lose, it's then like, oh, hamstring pulled, oh, I can't play anymore. Or they just give up and they don't even try anymore. Like my cheerleaders, if we're trying to do a stunt and they can't get it after 2 or 3 tries, like, oh, it's too hard, we can't do it. Give us something different. You know, a kid in math class is like, I'm trying to do math and I can't do it. I guess I'm just bad at math. I'll just be bad at math. And they just give up. But that's not how we get through life. And there are a few pretty spectacular failures in the Bible. I'm going to tell you the story of one guy who we don't think of as a failure, but if you look at his story, he failed a lot. His story is in some ways very similar to Rolling's story. His name is Moses. If you've been around church ever, you've probably heard of this guy. So, little backstory. God had some people. So there are all the people in the earth, and God came to Abraham. He's like, "You're my dude. I want my people to. I want you guys to be my people." And so Abraham ultimately had like millions. By the end, millions of great grandkids, and they had to move to Egypt because there was a famine. And they're living in Egypt, and everything was great. But over time, a new Pharaoh came in to power, and the Hebrew people, God's people, kept reproducing like rabbits. And he's like, there are so many of them. If I don't get control of these people, they're going to overrun me. They're going to take over my kingdom. And so he made them slaves. And he's like, I'll keep them down. I'll make them slaves. But they kept reproducing. And he's like, oh my gosh, these darn people. So he made an edict that all the baby boys had to be killed. Now, biologically, that was kind of dumb. He should have had all the baby girls thrown in the river, because it takes more, like, you reproduce a group of people, girls, not boys, but whatever. Pharaoh didn't know. I guess he didn't think about that. So he said, throw all the babies in the river. Well, then Moses' mom had him, and she's like, I can't do it. I mean, can you seriously imagine, those of you who've had kids, can you imagine throwing your kid in the river and drowning your kid? Can you imagine, Michelle, like, Jackson's born, and you're like, well, the president told me I gotta throw him in the river. Throw him in the river. I can't even imagine that. And so she's like, I can't do it. I cannot throw my beautiful baby in the river. So she's like, all right, I'll put him in the river. And so she made a basket, and she put him in the river and floated him down. And I don't know, it doesn't say this in the Bible, but I'm pretty sure she knew where it was going, because Pharaoh's daughter used to go hang out by the river. And so Moses' mom just happened to put baby Moses in the river upstream from Pharaoh's daughter. And down comes this little baby, this cute little baby. And Pharaoh's daughter's like, oh, look at the cute little baby. And so she raised him in the household. I think this is really ironic, that in Pharaoh's household, he's raising a child that was supposed to be thrown in the river. So Moses grows up, and he grows up like an Egyptian, but I mean, he knew he was Hebrew. One day he's out in the marketplace, and one of the Egyptians is bullying a Hebrew, and he's like, stop it. And it got heated, and he ends up killing the Egyptian guy. And so the Egyptians are mad at him, because they're like, you can't be killing Egyptians. And the Hebrews are like, you're going to cause trouble for us. Get out of here. And so he failed. He was probably thinking he was trying to help the Hebrew people by standing up for them, and he failed. And everybody's like, you're a loser. Get away from us. And so he runs away to the mountains. And for 40 years, he's in the mountains, living on the land. He finds a wife. He gets married. He's got some kids. And he's probably thinking, well, I've just failed at life. I'll just be this shepherd guy. And so he's out being a shepherd guy when he's like, you guys, he was like 80 when this happened. 80 years old. Can you guys imagine, those of you who are old, like, think about your knees, how much your knees hurt, and you're 80, and you're like out in the wilderness tending sheep and stuff. So here's where we pick up the story. It says, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Oreb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. We know the story. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it didn't actually burn up. And then the bush, this voice comes out of the bush and says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Can you imagine seeing a burning bush and a voice comes out of it? How scary that would be. So Moses is like, oh my gosh. He hides his face because he's afraid. And God's like, look, Moses, I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. You know the ones that you tried to stand up for? I've seen their misery. I've heard them crying. They're slaves. And I am concerned for them. I don't want them to be suffering. So I've come down to rescue them. I'm going to take them away from the Egyptians. I'm going to take them to this beautiful place, this spacious land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, milk and honey was like a luxury then. It's going to be this great place where everything is awesome. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them, so go. I'm going to send you, Moses. I want you to go to Pharaoh and bring my people from the Israelites out of Egypt. And Moses is like, who, me? You want me to go? God, don't you know I already failed? I already tried to stand up for them and it didn't work. He's like, who am I? You want me to go to Pharaoh, the king? I'm a wanted man. I murdered somebody. And you want me to walk right up to Pharaoh and ask him to release all of his slaves? I don't think that's going to work out so well, God. Are you sure? So he starts making excuses. And God's like, I'm going to be with you, Moses. It's cool. Just go do it. It's fine. I'm right there with you. But Moses is like, God, So here's the thing. I don't think they're going to believe me. They're not going to listen to me. Who am I? I'm just a shepherd. And he's like, what am I even going to say? Like, what do you want me to say? You want me to march right up? Imagine if God's like, hey, Margot, things are bad in America. I want you to march right into the White House. Margot would probably do it. Margot would be like, yes. I'd be like saying to Skylar, I want you to walk right into the White House and you're going to tell President Trump that he's going to stop all this nonsense. She'd be like, I don't think so. And he's like, what do I even say, God? And so God tells him what to say. He's like, just tell him that God said to do it, that I'm God and I said to do it. And Moses is like, God, I'm sorry, but I've never been great with speaking. I'm not eloquent, neither in my past nor since that you've spoken to me. I'm tongue-tied. I am slow of speech. I stutter. I'm not your guy. I can't do it. And God's like, don't worry, it'll be fine. I got you. I'm with you. And he's like, and he just keeps making excuses. And God will be like, but I'm with you. And God will be like, well, say this. And he's like, what if they don't believe me? And God's like, okay, cool. I tell you what, you're going to do a sign. You're going to take this stick, you're going to throw it on the ground, it's going to turn into a snake, and then you're going to grab it, and it's going to turn back into a stick. And they're going to be like, wow, that's cool. You must be from God. And Moses is still like, Lord, I don't know. This sounds really hard. Because Moses remembers that he failed already. And if you failed in life, in something big, it steals your confidence. And you think you can't ever do it again. You think you can't be successful. You attach that to your identity and you decide that you are a failure. Not that you fail, but that you are a failure. And so Moses keeps making excuses, and I feel like God's like, come on, man. You know? And Moses is like, pardon me, but Lord, I think you should send somebody else. I'm not your guy, God. I don't think I can do it. I'm a failure. I'm not equipped for this, God. I think you need to find someone better than me. And I feel like God's sitting there like, come on, man. And so finally he's like, Moses, but I'm going to be with you. So he sends his brother Aaron. They finally go before Pharaoh. If you know the story at all, he does the snake and the stick trick, and Pharaoh's like, oh, that's a cool trick. But yeah, I'm not giving away 1 million of my workforce for free. Sorry. And so God sends a plague. And Pharaoh's like, oh, snap, that was bad. Maybe I'll think about it. And Moses goes, he's like, okay, you see that I'm with God, right? And Pharaoh's like, yeah, but no. 10 times Moses goes to Pharaoh, like Rolling, submitted her manuscript 12 times. 10 times Moses goes before Pharaoh, and 9 times Pharaoh says no. Until finally God sends like a really big plague, and finally Pharaoh's like, get out of here. And he goes, but even after he went, Pharaoh's like, dang, that was a bad choice. And Pharaoh chased after him. If you know the story, God ends up coming through. And they go to the desert, and then they screw up, and God still loves them anyways. But they end up, when it's all said and done, God's people end up in the land of milk and honey. They eventually get where God wanted them to go. Moses felt like a total failure. He didn't think he could go before Pharaoh. He thought he would fail. And had Moses been sitting there tending sheep and be like, I'm really over this sheep tending. I think I'm going to go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. It wouldn't have worked. Without all the plagues that God sent, it wouldn't have worked. Without God being with Moses, it wouldn't have worked. Sometimes we try to do it on our own. Sometimes we go out, we get an idea, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go do that. And we go do it. And God's like, wait, come back. And we go and we fail. And we're like, God, you said to go do that, and I did it, and I failed. And he's like, well, yeah, because you went without me. Yeah, because you didn't wait on my timing. Well, yeah, because you tried to do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. You can do it with me. Let's do it together. You know, Rolling did it on her own. I don't know her theology. I don't know how she feels about God. But in our lives, when things are hard, we feel like a failure, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in business, whether it's in just a life situation or goal, we have all failed. And the way that we get through that, the way that we get to the land of milk and honey, the way that we walk out of that pain is with God at our side. And when we are talking to him and waiting on him and trusting in him. Moses would have never been able to do it by himself. He needed God by his side. You can't do it. You can try, and it'll be hard. If you try hard to do it by yourself, you will get worn out. But if you trust God, if you let God lead you, then things go so much more smoothly. And that's not to say there won't be bumps in the road. There will be. But when we trust on God, when we wait on God, when we do what God says to do and go where God says to go, when God says to go, he is with us. He says, I will be with you. And he makes that same promise with us. You know, this is an Old Testament story. Old Testament means before Jesus. The beauty of Jesus is when Jesus came, he said, when you say yes to me, when you get baptized, I come and live in you. The Holy Spirit lives in us. He is part of us. He is with us always. We are always carrying the Lord in our hearts when we get baptized and say yes to the Lord. We have that same promise. I will be with you. So if you feel like a failure, if there's some aspect in your life where you feel like a failure, talk to God. You know, Moses was in the desert for 40 years. 40 years. He just was a shepherd, thinking he'd been a failure. And I think that God was using that 40 years and all that time of quiet and solitude, tending sheep, to teach Moses how to listen to him, to show Moses who he was, to cultivate a relationship with Moses, because the whole rest, if you read the rest of the Exodus story, of the Israelite story, it was hard. It was constant hardship. And there's no way Moses could have gotten through that on his own. He had to have God with him. He had to be able to hear from God. He had to be able to listen and be led by God to do that. And so I think that 40 years in the desert was a time of maturity for Moses, was a time of learning to listen to and trust God. And so we each have that. We each go through that season where life is hard, it doesn't make sense, and we have to learn to listen. We have to learn how to trust. We have to learn how to hear from God. And when you do that, over time, eventually, you'll start to feel him more. You'll start to hear from him more. Things will start to open doors will start to happen because God is teaching you, and it's a process. I can tell you, I remember back in the days when I first started going to Crossroads, and they'd be like, we're going to be quiet, and you're going to ask God a question. You're all going to hear from him. And I'd be quiet, and I'd listen. Nothing. I'd hear nothing. And I was like, what the heck, God? Everyone else heard from you, but not me. And it's taken me years to start to feel like I actually hear from God when I talk to him. It is a process. I failed many times. Many times I failed at hearing from God. And God is teaching me over time how to listen and trust him. And he can do the same for you. And so this week, I dare you, double dog dare you. Write down a failure that you've been holding on to. What is some avenue in your life where you feel like you just didn't do it? You failed. Write it on paper. You can burn it, shred it, put it in the toilet, and watch it go away. And let God take that failure off of you. Ask God, what do you want to do with my life now? Where do you want me to go? Lord, I am here. Don't be Moses going, I think you should send someone else. When God says, I want you, be like, okay, God, I don't think I can do it, so you're going to have to be with me. You could read Moses' story in Exodus. What I gave you today was 1 through 4-ish. I cherry-picked stuff to make my point. But read the Exodus story, and then to engage, who's someone else in your life who has failed? Remind them of stories like Moses. Remind them of stories like J.K. Rowling. Remind them of stories like Einstein and Disney and all these people. Michael Jordan was cut from the basketball team in 8th grade. Told he wasn't good enough. There are so many stories of failure that can encourage other people. So if you know someone who is feeling like a failure, how can you encourage them with one of these stories that they would relate to the best? You are not alone. Your failure does not define you. It'll strengthen you. It'll teach you a lesson for sure, but it does not define you. Give your heart to the Lord. Remember, he is always with you. And all of God's children said, amen.